Have you ever heard of a love story that starts with heroism and ends in heartbreak? A story where a princess defies her powerful father, the king, to save the man she loves, only to see that love crumble into bitterness and silence? Today, we're diving deep into one of the most tragic and complex love stories in the Bible. The story of Michal, daughter of King Saul, and her husband, the future King David. This isn't just an ancient tale. It's a powerful lesson on love, sacrifice, unhealed wounds, and how the pain we hold on to can create a chasm between us and the joy God has planned for us. Michal's story begins like a fairy tale. She's the younger daughter of King Saul, and she sees something special in David, the young shepherd boy who defeated Goliath. The Bible tells us something unique about her. Saul's daughter Michal was in love with David. In a time when royal marriages were often political arrangements, Michal's love was genuine and passionate, and she proved it. When her father, consumed by jealousy, plotted to kill David, Michal didn't hesitate. She orchestrated a daring escape, letting David down through a window and then tricking her father's soldiers with an idol in the bed. She risked her own life, defying the most powerful man in the kingdom, all for love. It's a moment of incredible courage and devotion. You can just imagine the fear and adrenaline as she says her goodbyes, not knowing if she'll ever see him again. But this is where the fairy tale ends and the tragedy begins. While David was on the run, living as a fugitive, Saul, in an act of spite, gave Michal away to another man named Palti. For years, she lived a different life, separated from the man she had risked everything for. Can you imagine her confusion and sorrow? She was a pawn in her father's bitter game against David. Years later, after Saul's death, David becomes king. One of his first political moves is to demand Michal's return. The Bible describes a heartbreaking scene where her second husband, Palti, follows her, weeping, until he's ordered to go back. Michal is brought back to David's court, but she is no longer the young girl who fell in love with a hero. She is now a woman who has been betrayed by her father, abandoned by her first love, and torn from her second husband. She returns not as David's cherished wife, but as a political symbol, a piece of his claim to Saul's throne. The vibrant love that once defined her seems to have been replaced by a deep, unspoken wound. David, now a powerful king, is busy consolidating his kingdom and has married other wives. Michal is just one among many, a ghost from his past. The story reaches its devastating climax during one of the most joyous moments in Israel's history. David is bringing the Ark of the Covenant, the symbol of God's presence, into Jerusalem. He is so filled with joy and reverence that he dances before the Lord with all his might, wearing a simple linen garment. He's stripped of his royal robes, celebrating not as a king, but as a humble servant of God. The entire nation is celebrating with him. But Michal isn't celebrating. She's watching from a window. And when she sees David, her husband, dancing and celebrating in this way, the Bible says she despised him in her heart. The joy that filled the streets of Jerusalem could not penetrate the walls of her own pain. The bitterness and disappointment had taken root. When David returns home to bless his household, Michal confronts him with sarcasm and contempt. "How the king of Israel has distinguished himself today," she scoffs, disrobing in the sight of the slave girls of his servants as any vulgar fellow would. Her words are dripping with scorn. She sees his pure, uninhibited worship not as an act of faith, but as a loss of dignity. The hero she once loved is now, in her eyes, a fool. David's response is sharp and defensive. He reminds her that he was chosen by God over her father's entire family. He declares, "I will celebrate before the Lord. I will become even more undignified than this, and I will be humiliated in my own eyes." It's a painful exchange. Two people who once shared a deep love are now speaking different languages. He is speaking the language of faith and worship. She is speaking the language of bitterness and pride. This confrontation is their final recorded conversation, and the consequences are severe. The Bible concludes her story with a tragic sentence. And Michal, daughter of Saul, had no children to the day of her death. In that culture, childlessness was seen as a curse, a sign of barrenness not just of the body but of life and future. Her story, which began with such promise and love, ends in emptiness and silence. So, what can we learn from Michal's tragic life? Her story is a powerful warning about the danger of unhealed wounds. The trauma of being used as a pawn, of being abandoned and then reclaimed like property, festered in her heart. Instead of bringing her pain to God, she allowed it to turn into bitterness, cynicism, and pride. This bitterness ultimately blinded her. When she looked at David dancing, she couldn't see a man passionately worshiping his God. She could only see a reflection of her own disappointment and lost status. Her pain created a barrier that prevented her from sharing in the joy of God's presence. She was physically present for one of Israel's greatest spiritual moments, but her heart was miles away, trapped in the past. How many of us carry our own wounds, disappointments, betrayals, and hurts that, if left untended, can turn into bitterness? Michal's story reminds us that we have a choice. We can allow our pain to define us and distance us from God and others, or we can bring our broken pieces to God, the only one who can truly heal them. David, for all his flaws, consistently brought his joy, his pain, and his failures to God. Michal held hers inside until it poisoned her spirit. Her story is not just a tragedy, it's an invitation to examine our own hearts. Are there any hidden resentments or old wounds that are keeping us from experiencing the full joy of God's presence? Let's learn from Michal's pain and choose a different path, a path of forgiveness, healing, and open-hearted worship, so we can join in the dance instead of watching bitterly from the window. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into Michal's story. If this message resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, may you find healing and joy in His presence.